was real. Listen. Hi, Kath.
Hi, Trace. How are you?
All right. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
That's great. Um, you know, for tonight's episode, I know we've been doing a few palate cleansers, but I have to tell you, given all the weird crap from the two demonic possession episodes, like I know how it sounds, but I'm like, yeah, I kind of think we might need a little bit of
More.
psychic space around that. And then we can go back to things that, wind up
Dark
breaking,
and stormy.
yeah, breaking both of our computers, or like I had to send my mic to be replaced. I'm like, okay. So anyway, today I thought, there's so much paranormal news out there. It was actually hard to sift through it, but I picked out 5 news items that we can kind of chat about. And then if there's time, we can talk more about one in particular. But without further ado, I'm going to go down my list.
Excellent.
Great. So the first one was, and this seems timely given what you've been up to lately. And it was a news item in the Mirror, a UK newspaper, if you want to call it that. I'm going to put air quotes around newspaper. By the way, you're going to see that theme throughout the list.
Well, it's paper.
It may be. The world's most haunted doll attacks 17 men after being possessed by jilted bride. So anyway.
Seems legit.
I mean, what bride wouldn't want to wreak havoc and seek vengeance by possessing a doll and scaring the crap out of whoever jilted her? It seems the best way. So it says the spirit is believed to be much less violent when women are around. That's a plus. So again, she's thought to be possessed by the spirit of a scorned bride, dubbed the most haunted in the world. I think that's a tough title to claim personally, but the owner, one Lee Steer, a young gentleman, claimed he felt a burning sensation as a ghostly figure that he associates with the doll etched a pentagram onto his back. So I haven't
choice.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
interesting.
So I thought you said, did I see choice? Like, is that
an interesting choice,
Yeah. Interesting choice.
Could have gone with a rose, went with a pentagram,
Which isn't a universally like scary symbol. That's the other thing.
Or negative.
Yeah. So it's not a pagan spirit. Anyway, so there's supposedly a video clip that I haven't seen that shows another man's pink shirt being pulled by the irritable spirit that supposedly is named Elizabeth. They seem to be scant on details about either the spirit or the doll. But supposedly at least 15 other men besides these two have complained about being scratched by the male-loathing entity, also air quotes, which has also supposedly triggered fire alarms, moved items around rooms, and caused electronic interference in videos it appears in. Interesting. So Lee, Mr. Steer, is a 37-year-old paranormal investigator, and he purchased the eerie doll. I think this is the scariest part of the whole story, actually. Spoiler alert. He purchased the doll on eBay for £866, which is about twice that in US dollars,
right,
give or take. And I guess he wanted to display it in his Haunted Objects Museum in Rotherham, South Yorkshire. After hearing about its disdain for men. First of all, I mean, questionable choice if you are a man and it doesn't like men,
right.
But all right. So when women are around, I guess it moves objects or flicks lights on and off, but otherwise is harmless. And he said that the antics have escalated since he acquired other artifacts from the popular horror film that we talked about last week, The Conjuring. And he said, The Conjuring features a possessed doll named Annabelle. He recounted an incident where he's conducting a paranormal investigation with his partner, Sarah, who's 32, and a colleague inside the museum. And that's when he was attacked and felt the burning sensation and the pentagram-like scratches on his back. And then a perfume bottle just came flying off the shelf in a very strange way, he says, as if there's a normal way for that to happen. But okay. So the lore around the doll Elizabeth is that her spirit was treated badly by a man, and some think her wedding went wrong, and this is why she haunts a bridal doll. Some people think it's because Elizabeth has always been the center of attention in the museum, and now that they are getting in new items, she's feeling jealous. Um, he said, it's so funny. I could go into a commentary on this, but despite being attacked and scratched, the owner seems very confident in his own appeal, because he said they were doing a TikTok live and they have a few medium friends who were on there, and the medium supposedly said the doll actually had a keen liking for him.
Oh.
Because he reminds the doll of her previous fiance. That seems more implausible to me than anything I've read so far. Like, she probably doesn't really like you.
Yeah, I would imagine she wouldn't still like her fiance either if, if that's the cause of the haunting. I mean, listen, in full disclosure, I have haunted dolls in my museum. I've done lots. I have dozens of haunted dolls in my museum. I think I did hear this case, though.
Really?
I think I did. Yeah, I think I did hear about it within the last couple of weeks. And mainly because I think he did a press release. And he's so I mean,
of course,
he has a haunted museum. He wants people to come visit the haunted museum. I'm not gonna make an assessment as to, his character or plausibility or his motives. I'm just going to put that in there. Okay. It's that mix. I mean, it does seem interesting that it's interesting. It would be. I mean, and where did the 15 other guys come from? Like, did they just raise their hands once he was like, "Hey, this thing hates me"? Were they like, "Oh my god, it hated me too"?
I have no idea.
And
they were a little scant
That's a big
on
eBay investment,
for something that you're expecting to attack you, but like you still, kind of like a middle schooler trying to show that
that's
they have
exactly what I was thinking. It's like it's like pulling someone's hair because you like them. It's like a really juvenile kind of, way of showing you have a crush on someone.
Yes. So I would say on the scary factor, this is like honestly probably like a 2 for me.
Right.
I'm sure it would be higher if I were there. Although as a woman, I'm probably safer than he is.
You're fine. You're fine. Don't worry. And listen, I do think, I will say, I think haunted dolls are terrifying. Like
oh my God, regular dolls.
This story, I think the story around this kind of lends, you're right, every doll, Cabbage Patch dolls were terrifying. But I think the story around it makes it less scary. You know what I mean? Like, and really, and it's one of those very simplistic kind of stories too, where you're kind of like, really? So where did the doll come from? And how did she have the doll at her wedding, or did she like wait until she died and then found a doll? That was, you know what I mean? So
it's very short on details.
Yeah. As one might expect.
You'll notice a theme in the newspapers and the presentation of these stories. A lot of the headlines are a little clickbaity anyway, but let's see what you think. Yeah, the second one, the story in and of itself is not scary. It's actually intriguing, and it should inspire anyone listening and us as well to go for this. So number 2 in my 5 spooky-esque stories is Ring Camera. The owners of the company, Ring Camera, have you seen this? Are offering $100,000 for any evidence of ghostly phenomena that are captured on their cameras. So, yeah. And they said whether you catch a floating orb, an inexplicable shadow, or dress up as a friendly ghost, all supernatural sightings are welcome, the company said in a press release, another press release. Ring put together a judging team to choose a winner, including Stranger Things actor Finn Wolfhard and paranormal investigator Katrina Weidman.
Oh, Katrina, yeah.
Yeah. So the panel
who's lovely, by the way. Katrina's great. Katrina's a really nice person too.
She actually seems like she would be.
She's a sweetheart.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a fun gig for her.
yeah, and it seems very, it's October, right?
Yeah,
I think it's kind of interesting that they're like, or just dress up as a ghost. It's fine. It's fine.
I don't think they're going to give $100,000 for that.
It's fine. Just get us as much footage as we possibly can, so we can have content for social media.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fun.
Oh my God. I'm sure it's worth it to them to pay somebody, because they'll get enough submissions that they could probably reuse these clips.
$6,000 is like nothing for that. But I mean, I will say there are definitely people who think they've caught phenomena on their Ring cameras.
Oh, 100%. And it said the panel, will judge the submissions on the ghost's visibility or clarity, the entry's uniqueness, entertainment value, and I think that's where you might have a little artistic license,
a little leeway,
and engagement with the clip. But once they reach 5,000 entries, they're closing the submissions window. So you either have until November 1st or until they hit 5,000. I would get it in sooner if anybody has any cool footage. Kathy, you must have so much footage. Please submit.
I don't have a Ring camera. Unfortunately, I don't have a Ring camera, but I'm
going to rip mine out and give it to you. So yeah, that was a pretty easy. Talk about a palate cleanser. Now, I have a number 3, and I'm going to move it to 5 because I think we could spend a little more time on it. But number 4, I'm going to try and restrain myself so that I don't irritate anybody, which might be impossible. But Stormy Daniels says,
big paranormalist.
I did not know that.
Among other things.
She wears many hats.
Mm-hmm. Lots of interests.
Yes, lots of diverse interests. So Stormy Daniels says a non-human thing with tentacles haunted her former home. I'm not going to comment because it's too easy. But anyway, this was in Newsweek, actually, so it was not in a British tabloid. But basically, she's opened up about her paranormal experiences. I guess she's had a lot of them. And she said that a very dark, non-human thing with tentacles haunted her former home. And she claimed that the spirit broke items and affected her health and the mental health of her then boyfriend. She doesn't, I don't think she's naming the boyfriend here, but she, she's, as you know, Stormy Daniels is an adult film actress and director. It says she's best known for being involved in a legal dispute with Donald Trump. I'm going to say that's arguable. I bet some people knew her before that.
Right.
And that's great. No judgment. But anyway, she claimed to have had an affair with Trump and then was paid $130,000 in hush money to keep quiet before the 2016 election. And Trump has always denied the affair. And so Stormy Daniels' real name is Stephanie Gregory Clifford. She's appeared on the podcast Ghost Magnet with Bridget Marquardt, who was a former Playboy Mansion regular and star of, what was it, The Girls Next Door?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, but she discussed her intense experiences with the paranormal, which began when she moved into a 200-year-old house in the Garden District of New Orleans in 2019. New Orleans, of course, famous, as you could speak to more than I could, for lots of paranormal activity and lore. So I'm actually not surprised.
I think there's an argument. I think there's a lot of people who would consider New Orleans the most haunted city in the United States. Savannah would punch you in the mouth for that. St. Augustine might. I think there's an argument to be made for that, if only because it has an enormous amount of reportings. I actually know the area that she's talking about, and I'm actually going to be there on Friday. I had heard that story. I know that she's very involved in the paranormal. She does a lot of stuff on Instagram and whatnot. I think some of her stories are really like, she tells a good story. She tells a good story. The tentacle part of it, I get. I kind of get why that's the. But yeah, I'm not surprised. She kind of leans into the paranormal right now. But
I had no idea, honestly.
Oh yeah.
And I actually believe her. I
believe her.
I believe her generally. And she seems like a smart woman who
straight shooter
does not need to make up things about the paranormal. She's got enough, I don't want to say notoriety, but she's got, enough of a public presence. She wouldn't need this on top of it. But she said that she hired 2 mediums to come to her home, and they informed her that there were multiple entities, not just the thing with tentacles, the non-human thing. And the mediums actually, were clear about describing them to her. She described them to Bridget Marquardt. She said definitely one very, very dark non-human thing with these tentacles is what she caught on camera. She said it shattered her ex-boyfriend's guitar, that it just snapped it in half one day while it was sitting on the stand, and that entity hated her boyfriend. And then she said there's another entity there who's a woman who lost a child and blamed herself. And that if Stormy stood in a certain spot in the kitchen, like she herself would feel so overcome with sadness that she would just start crying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the final spirit that she described on that podcast episode was felt by a medium she talked to over Zoom, who said, I guess Stormy was saying that the house is partially furnished and there's a very old mirror there, which I always think is kind of spooky. But she always used to feel like someone was watching her through the mirror.
Right.
But she also said it was kind of a protective feeling. I'd still get rid of the mirror. I'm sure it looks lovely. But she confirmed, she said the medium confirmed the mirror, like the medium brought it up without seeing it, and she could describe the mirror.
Right.
And she said there's a woman that used to get made up in that mirror. She was a lady of the night. This is how the medium phrased it. And she identifies with you because you're a sex worker, and she's very protective of any man who gets in that bed with you. I guess nice to have a protective spirit.
Yeah.
Nice
to know a sister's looking out for you. That's
really
that's nice.
All she needs is the doll now.
Yeah,
she's totally protected.
And then she might not be able to make a living, but she's protected.
Absolutely. Yeah, she said that the happenings of the house ramped up over time. She eventually installed cameras in the house that caught shadows of things moving around. When her lease was up and she was preparing to leave, she said the house got aggressive. Mm-hmm. So I don't know the rest of the details, but you can Google that episode and we can find it and even put a link to it in the show notes. Yeah. So that's that. I'm going to call that number 3.
Mm-hmm.
I also felt like it was important for us to be very neutral in our description, given that people might have strong reactions to either the tentacle ghost or Stormy Daniels herself, or I was thinking Shark Week. We just couldn't. There's no ghost shark though. So I think this is number 4. All right. This is going to be a quick episode. So also in a British tabloid, shocker, in the Mirror, I fell for this clickbait. I want to see what you think. The headline was "Mum lost half of her body weight thanks to a ghost and bonking her new man." That's exactly how they phrased it. Mm-hmm. Imagine being the editor that's got to say yay or nay to that headline and story.
Imagine what they turned down.
I can't fathom it. Probably not a lot.
No, that's too much. Go less. Go less. Back. Okay. Bonking? Yeah, we'll go with bonking.
That's the better choice.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
Yeah, so right away, my first thought was like, is she dating the ghost?
Well, it could go either way, that grammatically.
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, by the way, as an aside, I did think I came across like a million stories, and I think one was of a woman who said she had married a ghost or something. And did you see that?
Kind of famous. Yeah, that one's kind of famous. Mm-hmm.
Like, I was actually like, no.
Too much.
It's too much.
That's a bridge too far.
It really is. So anyway, and you always know it's a British newspaper because they say mum instead of a mom or mother. Yeah. So a mum of 4 has shared how she lost almost half her body weight following the breakdown of her 10-year marriage. And she says it's all thanks to ghost hunting and bonking her new man. I wonder if she actually used that word or she's like enraged that that's how they phrased it. Anyway, Lindsay Steer, which actually I think is the same name, isn't it, of the guy, the unrelated guy in the haunted doll story? This might be something weird there. But Lindsay Steer described how she gorged on takeaways and sugary snacks, piling on the so unkind, piling on the pounds when her marriage went downhill, causing her waistline to balloon to a size 16. I guess I don't know if British sizes are different. Anyway, the tipping point came in August 2013 when the 5'2" ghost hunter looked in the mirror. She recalled how she barely recognized her bloated and haggard face and decided something had to change. I would be more horrified by this story written about me than the ghosts.
You have to do this in an English accent. You have to read it in like I looked at myself. That's almost like a Scottish accent, though.
Yeah, I don't know if
I could
You could do it in Irish accent.
But I won't offend my Irish sensibilities by doing that.
I used to be able to do it very good, better, but it's just you lose it if you don't use it.
you wonder like which cast she's in, as far as, is it Cockney? Is it London? Is it, like Mid-Atlantic? Is it, well, it wouldn't be Mid-Atlantic, but
I doubt she is a member of the landed gentry,
who
only
knows
because
though?
it's possible.
Who knows?
Those estates take a lot of money to support.
Yes, like Downton Abbey, where she'd be like, "Good Lord, the ghosts." Then I was bonking the ghosts, of course. I don't even know what accent that is, but
it's the American trying to sound British.
Generic,
But it's very good.
The ghosts were bonking all night. Ghost bonker.
In a massive effort of willpower, the mum of four started to turn things around. She changed her eating habits. Okay, reasonable. Upped her exercise, also good, including conducting more ghost hunts. That she shares on her paranormal page, Lindsay's Paraquest. Everyone check that out. As her hard work started paying off and she started shedding pounds, her confidence blossomed. She started dating a man she met on TikTok. That actually sounds scarier to me than either the weight gain or the ghosts.
I don't know if she's hunting ghosts either, because I've done a lot of that and it's not that strenuous. It's
racing through graveyards.
I'm like actively hunting them. You know what I mean? Like with
chasing them,
and like
she's racing through the haunted forest.
It's ghost hunting and also chasing.
Absolutely. She said she is smitten and credits her new slinky size 8. Her new slinky size 8. She is 8 stone and 1 pound. Her new slinky size 8 stone, 1 pound figure to healthy eating, chasing ghosts, and an active love life.
That's 133 pounds.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was thrown by this abbreviation for stone. It just like I read it, it didn't.
Actually, I'm wrong. So that is 108
stone.
8 stone is 80 plus 32. So 113 pounds, I guess.
For some reason, that sounds too low.
Because a stone is 14 pounds.
So they have a few different pictures, and I'm not judging. I have no idea. It's hard to kind of tell.
Right.
She looks wonderful. She didn't look bad to me before either.
Right.
But apparently
that's because she was only 16 stone. She was only 16 stone.
Okay. I'm not judging. But Lindsay is from Sheffield, South Yorkshire. I don't know what my problem is tonight. It must be the ghost. My ex-husband and I were together about 10 years. When I first met him, I was like I am now. I always looked after myself. And then it turned into a vicious cycle. I was really unhappy in my life and the state of my marriage. So I comforted Lindsay, you're not alone. After we broke up, she said, I looked in the mirror and I thought, what the hell? I looked haggard. I wasn't looking after myself. One morning I woke up and thought, right, Lindsay, you've got to get up and get yourself sorted out. That I should have read in a British accent. If we ever do this episode again, I'll brush up. She said, I started to eat more whole foods instead of convenient foods and started to feel so much better. Now I'm in a new relationship. Obviously, there's a lot of exercise. I guess I feel like winking. I've got a lot of time to make up for it. I'm now happy and healthy. I can also credit my weight loss to such an active job chasing ghosts. I go all over the place and walk a hell of a lot. I feel empowered and sexy. I've got my confidence back. As Lindsay embraced her new healthy eating and exercise regimen, she met her new partner over TikTok. And after 6 months of chatting online, they met in his home country of Albania. And the rest is history.
Lots to unpack there.
So much to unpack.
So much to unpack.
I wonder if she's going to sue them for the bonking.
To Lindsay, go girl, you do you.
You got it, Lindsay.
You do you. However many stones
you were fine
are
before.
Yeah, I'm all about it.
Yeah, but you know what? Good for you.
Rock on.
I know it wasn't, the story itself wasn't as salacious and sensational as the headline,
as the bonking. Yeah, as I'm going to say they really put the good stuff up front, right?
Yeah,
because it was like ghost hunter bonks away weight, and then the follow up was I was unhappy and I started eating right and exercising. Not
kind of a letdown.
You know, kind of like you snuck in some like reasonableness, kind of rational stuff in there.
Yes.
But I
So
clicked on it too.
I was like, now that I've wasted all this time reading this, I have to
read the damn thing.
I picture the lawsuit when she's like, I never said
I
bonking.
didn't bonk. There was no bonking.
It was quite respectable.
Exactly. He's from Albania, for crying out loud.
All right. And on to number 5. So number 5 is kind of, it's like a compound news item because there's news embedded in the news. But I'm going to tell you, this one will be a little near and dear to your heart, Kathy. Because when I was searching for paranormal news items, you want to know the topic that came up in the first like 8 items on Google. Like, I can't believe how many news items there were about this. You're not going to guess.
I won't guess.
So West Virginia,
Trans-Allegheny?
apparently, that's only a part of it.
Yeah.
So the West Virginia Department of Tourism is now promoting West Virginia hauntings, like a whole bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so funny. There's nothing I could tell you that you'd be like, oh my God.
Only because it was a big deal. And New York State did it this year as well.
Really?
But in West Virginia, they actually have an entire town that they've had a TV show about where the entire town was investigated for several years. And so West Virginia has really doubled down on its historical hauntings. And I should say, so is the Hudson Valley.
Honestly, I'm convinced there's nothing you don't know. It may also be a whisper of telepathy, but I think you actually just know. But for our listeners who may not know, I'm going to give them a little overview.
Yes, sorry, I shouldn't have jumped the gun.
And then no, I want you to. So, so the press release was in celebration of spooky season. Governor Jim Justice and the West Virginia Department of Tourism today announced the launch of a statewide paranormal trail designed to help spook seekers discover the state's most spine-chilling sites. An accompanying digital passport allows visitors to check in at haunted locations, earning points and unlocking exciting prizes along the way. I don't know what the prizes are. So, of course, as you mentioned immediately, the first thing on their list is, or one of the primary things on the list is what?
Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum.
100%. And their little snippet is with its Gothic architecture, dark history. It's a popular destination for paranormal enthusiasts, including Kathy Kelly, of course, wanting to experience the chilling atmosphere firsthand. The site's been featured on Sci-Fi's Ghost Hunters and the Travel Channel's Ghost Adventures. Kathy, you want to talk, give a little blurb? Because we could do a whole episode on Trans-Allegheny, but
we could do a whole season on Trans-Allegheny. So it's a Kirkbride building, which is a type of architectural building built by Charles Kirkbride in I'm going to say from the 1840s to like the 1870s, where when the United States was just kind of moving into understanding that there was mental health and that you had emotional issues. And these buildings were built as kind of cathedrals. The architecture is stunning and beautiful. They're massive. And the idea behind the architecture was that they were supposed to replicate the cathedral of the mind. So the idea was that the mind is this beautiful, beautiful thing. And you're coming into this place, you should understand the magnitude of how important the treatment of the mind was. And that may have been what the architects intended when they were building it. It's not necessarily what happened once people got in. And almost to a building, those buildings became kind of synonymous with abuse and the maltreatment of patients, largely because there was a huge underestimation of how many people require treatment. In addition to that, there were people who were put in these facilities for being disagreeable or for being, outspoken or for being lots of different things that were not necessarily mental illnesses, but might have been, unpleasant character traits for a specific person. And so you do have them. They're kind of dotted specifically throughout the Northeast. But a lot of them, there are some, obviously they're in West Virginia as well. They do go I think there's a couple of them out in Indiana and things like that. We have a couple of them here in New Jersey. A lot of them are being torn down. They are structurally phenomenal. I mean, you go into these places, they're massive, and they have these beautiful facades, right? So you walk into this building and there's this majesty to it, and the architecture is stunning. And then the further you get into it, the less kind of stunning and beautiful these facilities become, and they become very industrial looking and very kind of, really utilitarian. In the beginning, these people opened these facilities, I would say, with the best of intentions. And it was, as time went by, as there was very little oversight, you started to have an enormous amount of abuse. It's also at these, I think Trans Allegheny was actually, if not the first, I think it was the first place where lobotomies were commonly practiced. And they were commonly practiced on hysterical women, women who were considered, honestly, it was mostly women who were suffering from depression or who were outspoken and just, I mean, for lack of a better word, independent. And it's particularly in the early part of the 20th century, husbands would bring their wives in because they were unhappy, and their intention was, hey, make my wife happy,
or get her out of the way even.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it was, I would want her to be happy, but I only want her to be happy in this particular way. So, but yeah, I mean, you had, and the doctor that actually started the lobotomy, he wasn't a medical doctor. He didn't have any surgical training or anything. And there was, like I said, there was very little oversight in places like this. So he came up with an experimental procedure and was able to just do it without anybody paying attention to him. But Trans Allegheny is interesting because it is very well preserved. I've investigated there a couple of times. I would say it's one of the few places where I definitely think that there is activity. Just kind of where I've had my own experiences, or where you really do feel kind of the weight of the place around you. It is a impressive facility. When you pull up to it, if I have the pictures, I'll post. We can post them too, because I have some footage of the last time I was there. You pull up to this place and it's like, holy moly, it's massive. It looks like a huge royal estate. And it's the idea was that, and it was for the patients, but it was really more for the patients' families, that you would walk in and be awed by the place that you were bringing your loved one. And it would kind of evoke or instill a sense of confidence. And I think in the early days, the doctors and the administrators believed that you have these facilities that were originally built for 400 people, and then ultimately housing 5,000 and 6,000 people, where of course, things are going to kind of fall apart. And Trans Allegheny was in operation until at least the 80s, if not the 90s. I mean, it was not called Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, though. I mean, that's something it's been changed to since it's become a paranormal location, because I think it's got a little bit more of a scary cachet. It was a hospital. It might have been called the Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum 120 or 130 years ago, and I'm not even sure that that's the case. It is run by an individual, so it's owned by an individual. And there are the times that I've investigated, I do have to say, I really, really thought that the people that were doing the investigations there were lovely people who genuinely cared about the history and genuinely believed that they were working with the spirits of human beings and were treating them that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing. And I just want to let people listening know, if you've listened to our earlier podcast episodes, I think, Kathy, it might have been the one on, I don't remember the title, if it was premonitions or precognitive dreams or psychic dreaming,
I think it was
or whatever.
Precognitive dreams. I was actually at Trans Allegheny when we were doing that.
Right. And, because I remember you were there and we were like, oh, we'll talk about it soon. And then, but you did spend the night awake there.
Oh, yeah.
You were with Becca and her friends. Just as an aside, this was Becca's 30th birthday gift to herself.
Right. It was,
I think,
you know what, her 30th birthday
or
gift.
one of them.
I'm gonna give her a shout out. She's getting married tomorrow, so this is a shout out for Becca.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Hey, congratulations.
Becca's one of the greatest kids on the planet.
She's
She's
awesome.
really lovely, lovely. I'm saying she's not a kid, but she's always going to be a kid to me. We did the Lizzie Borden for her 30th birthday, but this
Right.
was it was the third time that I'd been at Trans Allegheny. And it was her first time, or I think she had visited on a tour and really wanted to go in and do an investigation. And I remember because she was disappointed because there was very little activity, and that started that discussion. And you and I've had that as well, where to me, this is number one, why you investigate multiple times, but also the times that you don't get activity, to me, validates the times that you do. Because if you go into a place, like for instance, I've investigated Eastern State more than 30 times.
Oh my God.
I think maybe 6 times we got recordable evidence, and maybe 7 times we had experiences that I thought were beyond beyond the norm. Which means that there were like 25 times that there wasn't. And so the 25 times that there wasn't always makes me have a stronger feeling about the times that there were, because if it was something that was being caused by environmental things, or observer effect, or just a willfulness on the investigator's part, we would have it every time. And I remember when we were at the Trans Allegheny this past time, there was some visual stuff that I saw with my eyes that we did not capture on camera. Again, though, I'm not a heavy equipment investigator anymore. I think that's like earlier, kind of in the beginning of when you investigate, you really get into the equipment. But I do think it's a really impressive space, and the whole town is impacted by that. And so to get back to the original story, which was about the kind of haunted heritage trail, I love the idea of that. I love the idea of using paranormal history as a methodology of preserving all history. And also I love the idea of inviting all people in to experience things, And so the thing about paranormal history and paranormal investigations, a lot of times you go to places and they don't want you there because they think, well, if people start to know this place is haunted, they won't want to come. And number one, that's ridiculous. Okay. For 2 reasons. One is if
certain people won't want to, and other people will be like a moth to a flame.
They won't find out. Right. So if they're not interested in the paranormal aspect of it, they'll never hear about the paranormal aspect of it. And if they are interested in the paranormal aspect about it, they're probably interested because of the paranormal aspect. So so I love the idea that you have a tourism board that's starting to understand that this part of history, it's just like art history or any other type of history. It's just a prism through which we look at it. And I think that's great. I think that's really exciting.
100%. And it's interesting because as you're talking, I'm remembering you and Becca and I were on our first trip in search of something spooky, going to Gettysburg during a snowstorm of all things. That's another place where it's like everybody's pretty open about haunted phenomena. It seemed like it didn't seem like the town itself was trying to hide.
No, I think it's because it's kind of like I think it's because it saved it. I mean, it created an entire stream of an entire kind of revenue stream and an entire kind of tourism stream that didn't add to their there's no additional costs for having people buy your tour because it's a ghost tour. And so I'll tell you, there's other places like Salem and lots of these different places. New Orleans has a huge paranormal industry. Salem has a huge paranormal industry. I would argue that San Diego has probably 20 to 30% of its tourism comes from its paranormal.
Wow.
The Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, can probably trace its resurgence back to being paranormal. But if you're going to look at Eastern State Penitentiary, absolutely survived. The building survived because of paranormal interest in it, because of the Halloween event that they do. And if you look at the surrounding area, the gentrification of the surrounding area, if you want to look at it as a good thing. Although I'm not sure gentrification is the right word, because it was largely abandoned. So it wasn't really so much that cultures, communities got driven out. But the fact that, you have people living there, restaurants opening, can be completely brought back to the fact that paranormal history and paranormal interest threw $5 to $6 million a year into that area around Halloween every year. So, I think a place like West Virginia, which probably doesn't have a huge tourism, although, I'm a Hatfield McCoy person, and I'm a Civil War person, so I would absolutely spend time there. But I don't know that a lot of people from outside the region would go there. But knowing that you're welcome there is a big deal for paranormal enthusiasts. Knowing that not only are you welcome there, but somebody else has kind of done the legwork, and you don't have to find the places. This restaurant is haunted. You're going to tell me how this restaurant is haunted. You're going to invite me in. I'm not going to have to fight for it. I think that's a really smart move, and it makes me want to go to West Virginia. In fact, Trixie, let's go to West Virginia. What do you do next month? Let's go.
I'm laughing because you're my person. Everybody else has to go online and look for the tours or the guidebook. I'm like, I'll just ask you, and we'll
just text me.
Where's the most haunted place? So I had other items on the West Virginia list, but I'm wondering if we should save them for another time or talk about them now. What's your vibe?
That's up to you. I mean, I'd love to hear about them. If you want to throw a couple out there,
yeah, I'm sure. So I'm gonna go back to my little list, because the one other thing actually on here that I noted as noteworthy, was the Lake Shawnee Abandoned Amusement Park. And I'm sure you have heard of it. You've probably gone there.
I have not gone there, but I have seen pictures of it.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you why I was intrigued by this. And this is the power of TV, ghost hunting and paranormal shows and all that. So this place has been obviously, of interest to paranormalists for a while. The West Virginia Department of Tourism obviously is promoting it as such. But I remember seeing an old Dead Files episode with Amy Allen going and exploring, and all the creepy stuff that had happened, all the misfortune, the lives lost,
right?
She said there's a group of angry dead people. It was shot in such a way that the episode was really compelling, and the people really did seem concerned, like this had affected them. Now it's funny because fast forward, I don't know if it's the same owners or not, but certainly they're capitalizing on the things that were very distressing to them, and they seemed genuinely distressed before. So just a little overview. The Shawnee Native American tribe had been in the area for quite a bit longer, well before any European settlers came, of course. And they lived on that property, people estimate, for 2,000 years. And this is on, I think it is on one of the West Virginia official sites, this overview. So in more recent history, Chief Cornstalk, who was lived from 1720 to 1777.
That's more recent.
More recent than 2,000 years. Yeah.
It's a great name, in a way.
Yes. Yes. They cut right to the chase. So Chief Cornstalk was a prominent leader of the Shawnee Nation just prior to the Revolutionary War. His name translates, his Shawnee name translates loosely into stalk of corn in English, and it's spelled cornstalk. Anyway, he opposed European settlements west of the Ohio River when he was a young person. He later became an advocate for peace after the Battle of Point Pleasant in 1774. He was murdered.
Amazing, important supernatural place in West Virginia.
The Battle of Point Pleasant?
No, Point Pleasant itself.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Another place to put on our list. Most definitely. So anyway, Chief Cornstalk's murder by American militiamen at Fort Randolph happened during a diplomatic visit. And of course, this outraged Native Americans. It should outrage everybody. So that's just one of the traumatic things that happened in the area. I always wonder if I'm pronouncing this correctly.
Tecumseh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Tecumseh, who was born in 1768 and died in 1813. By the way, in Shawnee, his name means shooting star, panther across the sky, or blazing comet. So he was a Native American Shawnee warrior and chief who became the primary leader of a large multi-tribal confederacy in the early 19th century. So since his death, Tecumseh has become an iconic folk hero in American, Indigenous, and Canadian history.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of history to the land, some tragedy as well. And now I'm going to get to the other tragedies at this location, at this amusement park. And the Mitchell Clay family, I guess, wound up with this land. So Mitchell and Phoebe Clay were the first English settlers of Mercer County in 1775. So in the late 1700s, Mitchell Clay brought his young family out west, and they established an 800-acre farm and raised 14 children. So I can imagine acquiring 800 acres. Maybe that wasn't seen as a uniformly great thing. Anyway, tragedy struck the Clays in 1783. So they hadn't even really been there that long. A Native American tribe reportedly slew 2 of the young Clay children while Mitchell was out hunting. And then they kidnapped one of the boys, one of them that they didn't initially kill. So they killed 2, and then they kidnapped young Ezekiel, and then they burned him alive at the stake. So very distressing. So Clay came home distraught. I can't even put it into words. And then he retaliated. So with the help of other settlers, he tracked down several Native Americans and killed them. And the scarred homestead was never the same after that, as one would imagine. So the property itself did not attract much notice until the 1920s. That's when it says Snitto appeared. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but appeared with his rides and attractions. I guess Snitto is the person who formed the amusement park, created the amusement park on this large parcel of land. So he installed circular swings, a water slide, a dance hall, a speakeasy, and added a pond, a swimming hole, and canoes, and so forth.
What year was this?
This was in the 1920s.
Mm-hmm.
So tragedy strikes again, however, and reportedly a little girl died on the swings. I'm not sure how that happened. And a boy drowned in the pond. And over time, roughly 6 people died during the amusement park's brief history. So the amusement park itself wasn't there that long. I mean, it's just the shadow of the amusement park, like, ruins of the rides and so forth are on the land now. In 1966, the attraction was fully abandoned. The cheerful turquoise, red, and green rides slowly faded and flaked, according to the article, and their rusty skeletons surrendered to the restless undergrowth, as they say. So, it would probably look creepy to go there.
Right.
And then after about 20 years, another businessman approached Lake Shawnee, and his name was Gaylord White. And Gaylord White thought that, these meadows seemed ideal for future neighborhoods. So I guess he wanted to develop them. But as construction crews tore into the grass and the soil, they unearthed bones and Native American artifacts. So it turns out that they concluded that the amusement park sat atop an ancient burial ground. Mm-hmm. Right. And a lot of people have attributed a lot of the deaths of the people who drowned and the little girl on the swing to the fact that this is on a Native American burial ground. Most of the skeletons that they found belonged to children. Archaeologists believe the remains had been there long before the settlers moved west. So you're talking before the late 1700s.
Right.
And then people wondered, well, was the Clay family also cursed now, given the horrific end for 3 of their children and what the parents had to live with?
Right.
So needless to say, the abandoned amusement parks attracted a number of ghost hunters and paranormal experts for years and years. In fact, Lake Shawnee supposedly ranks as one of the Travel Channel's most terrifying places in America. ABC described the property as one of the 10 most haunted places in the world. I mean, that's saying something. I'm not getting that from the description, believe it or not, just because, you
Because
and
I
I have
could
heard
think
about
of
a
at
million.
least 10 places. I can think of 9 other places more.
Yeah, not that this is good.
Right, right,
You know,
right.
not that I'd like want to go
But
camp
also,
out there.
what does most haunted mean? Does it mean most number of spirits? Does it mean most active spirits? Does it mean most experiences that people have? I mean, you could go to, I would argue Poveglia is, 700,000 people died there, and I would say maybe it's a little bit more than Shawnee. I don't know.
I don't
I
know.
don't know what else has happened.
I think you would feel it at either place.
That's what I mean. Like, I think to say one is more than the other, I'm not sure how you would. People ask me that all the time, like, what's the most haunted place you've ever been? And my answer is the Paranormal Museum, because that's where I've had the most activity. It doesn't mean that it's more haunted than any other place, but I've seen the most places in the most things in my own place.
Yeah. And also for good reason, not just from spending time there. You have a lot of stuff.
Right. But also because of spending time there. I
Yeah,
mean,
of course.
and just because I spend time there, I'm far more likely to have those experiences. But I would say I would question whether or not the spirits were responsible for those children dying in that kind of what sounds like a half-assed amusement park from a time period when there wasn't a whole lot of concern put on safety,
Or
safety
supervision,
constraints.
we don't know enough to know.
Yeah, we don't know enough. Yeah.
And I think that there's so much lore that arises around things like kids dying in a swimming hole, but I don't know why. Like, was this novel for the area? I don't know.
Yeah,
Or people
and,
not watching their kids. Like, I don't. I don't know.
and if there were 10,000 people, there in a year, one person dying obviously it's horrific, but
Yeah,
it's not a big. You wouldn't look at that and be like, wow, that's unlikely.
Yeah. No, 100%. We're not trying to be insensitive. It just
No, not at all,
obviously it's a
not at
big
all.
deal to that family.
Yeah,
But
and obviously one is too many, but
yes,
that
but
doesn't mean that the spirits
statistically,
were pulling it down.
right, 100%. Although they could be, and I really don't know.
Right.
I guess visitors are encouraged to go there and, for the spooky thrills, and they've heard footsteps and they've heard mysterious chants and children like chanting.
Right.
Sometimes one of the swings will move on its own. And at one point, I don't know if this is that scary to me, but at one point, reportedly, somebody got locked in a shabby ticket booth, even though the doors don't lock. It's an old door. I don't know. But could something have settled? I don't know. But I understand that you would be primed to feel scared. And
Right.
could it be haunted? It could be haunted as hell.
Right.
Honestly, when Amy Allen and Steve DeShavi went, honestly, the people looked genuinely scared, the owners, and Amy seemed genuinely to pick up on a number of very unhappy spirits,
Right.
who did not want people there.
Right.
So, she
Now you
described
get
them
into
as
the ethics of the question, right? So now you get into the from the perspective of promoting this as a haunted location and commercializing it as a haunted location. So if I actually love the idea of having people to go visit, because now they learn that story. And they learn the story of the history prior to Western Europeans coming in, and we interpret that history now differently than it was interpreted in the 1920s, the 1940s, the 1960s, the 1980s, and the 2000s, right? So we look at things differently now, and we say, okay, and that to me is one of the reasons why these kinds of things are so important. But the flip side of that is, if you are in fact dealing with sentient beings who just happen to be non-corporeal, so people without bodies, but still people, who are like, we don't want you here. What's the ethics of doing that? And my argument back would be, you don't really know for sure, and maybe it was just that night, and maybe my argument would be that as long as the facility and the area is treated with respect, until you have some evidence that what you're doing is unwanted, it's okay to do it. But then once you have that evidence, skedaddle. Get out of there.
Yeah.
Leave it alone.
we're on the same page there. But I'm curious about what our watchers and our viewers and watchers is creepy, our viewers and our listeners think. What are some of the spooky news stories that caught your attention? Let us know what you think. We're always eager to hear more about what's going on out there.
I'm also really interested. I mean, those are some broad stories, but everybody has that haunted place in their town, you
Mm.
know, that may not get to the national registry. It may not get to, but I'd like to know what's the local, you know, what's the local news on what's going on. And obviously, we're always interested in knowing what you'd like us to talk about and what you'd like us to delve into. And I would like you to @Tracy so that she knows that it's time for us to go to West Virginia
Oh my
and do
goodness.
the paranormal trail, which sounds like a ton of fun to me.
All right. Yeah, we may go and explore someplace just because you mentioned it. So
Absolutely.
you never know. So thanks everyone. Once again, thanks for joining us. We do this for us and we do this for you. So let us know what you think, as Kathy said. And of course, until next time, as always, stay curious.
And keep exploring.
Bye.